Hey everybody, what's up? Tim with today's SCE. Hope wherever you're at, you're doing awesome, crushing it, having a phenomenal day. Thanks as always for watching. And the title for today's shoot is Single-Mindedness. So Tony Robbins said that success and achievement is 80% psychological and 20% technical and execution. And when you think about that, that's very, very true. That a lot of times the things that we're going for and looking for in life, a lot of it has to do with our mentality and our belief system. And what are we anchored to? What are we centered on? Where is our thinking going? And what are we focused on? And then the 20% is about the actual execution and the task and the skill sets that are associated with that. Now, one of the main components that I found to be true for anything that we're believing for, anything that we're looking for, is single-mindedness. Once you've got a target in sight, once you've got something that you know you want, something you know you desired, and you're looking to move in that direction, you need to be single-minded in your focus. We need to turn off all the external voices and resources that are going to try to pull us off of going for that direction. And there's thousands of voices that attack us all the time. Voices internally that say we can't do it and we're not enough and we're not going to make it. There's external situations and circumstances that show up that speak against wherever we're trying to go. Other people oftentimes will also try to convince us that we shouldn't go after what we want to, or that we can't do it, or that's impossible. And there's all this pressure that comes alongside of us anytime we're trying to become more of who we are. Now, the cool thing is that pressure, I believe, is always an indication that we're supposed to be going where we want to be going. It's almost like that resistance is a validator that where we're going is where we're supposed to be going. But oftentimes you and I aren't going to be able to achieve or do anything that's significant without running through resistance. And I've always taken on the mindset that the more resistance, the better. It's a clear the indicator that that is exactly the direction that I, in fact, should be going in. So single-mindedness means that once we set that direction, that we absolutely are firm in going in that way. We are not going to be moved by anything that's external. Circumstances may come up that make things look impossible. There may be challenges that arise, but we are not going to pay attention to those. People may say, that's impossible, that's not going to work, you can't do it, especially the people who are closest to us. And we're not going to give them any credence or any consolation either. We're going to turn those off. And oftentimes the mental dialogue, the internal dialogue, as you know and as I know, is the most difficult to come against, because as soon as we run into that resistance, as soon as we run into that adversity, that voice starts to go on inside of our head. And a lot of times I don't even think it's our own voice, it's getting shot into us from another source. But that voice comes to us inside of our head saying, you can't do this. It's never been done before. You can't make it happen. It's not going to work out. There's no way you're going to get to where you're going. And what single-mindedness does is it turns everything off except for where you want to go. All your thoughts, all your emotions, all your words and your actions reinforce the direction that you want to go. And you are going to literally ignore and turn off the resistance that's coming against you to derail you. So one of the most interesting things that I've discovered is some of the people who've achieved and done and the most remarkable things have experienced the most resistance. They've experienced the most resistance from other people. They've experienced the most resistance in circumstances and challenges. And they've experienced some of the most torturous mental dissonant, the mental difference between saying I do want this versus that voice saying I don't want this. And what happens is that creates double-mindedness. And with a rifle, you can't aim at two things at one time. You're either going to aim at one or you're going to aim at the other. And where double-mindedness is so disastrous is it splits your energy and you end up going nowhere, which is why single-mindedness is so critical and being able to turn those other things out. So here's the deal. Single-mindedness occurs because we become aware of our thinking. Once you start to become aware of your thinking and you start to monitor it, you realize that you have a lot of opportunity to be pulled off track. And the greatest, most successful people have experienced that as well. But what I found is they've experienced more temptation, if you will, to think negatively, to think disastrously, to think fearfully, and to bow to those voices that are outside themselves from other people or bow to those circumstances. And they recognize them, but they just as quickly pull off of them and get back into their thinking. They just as quickly step away from them and resist them and get back into the direction that they want to go. So single-mindedness doesn't necessarily mean that you're always thinking, this is where I want to go, this is where I want to go, this is where I want to go. Now, I'm not that highly developed in it. I'm closer than I was. Obviously, that's the goal, but that can be really difficult because we're all human. Single-mindedness means that once you get pulled off track, you just get back on track as quick as you can. It's not that you're not distracted. It's not that you don't experience resistance. resistance or challenges, it's not that those voices don't speak to you both from inside and outside. It means that you run into them, but you pay them no attention. You say, you know what? These are voices and these are situations that are not taking me to where I want to go. I am turning the direction of my rifle, so to speak, to where I want to go. I'm getting back on track. And single-mindedness, I think, is more about our ability to redirect our thinking when it gets pulled off course than it is to maintain that single stream of thought that never ends, because that's a really, really tough thing to do. So in order to get to where we want to go, we need to be single-minded. Ideally, that means we're always thinking in terms of where we want to go and what we want to do, always focused through our actions and our thoughts and our words and our emotions. But that's not realistic. What I think is more realistic is anytime we get pulled off of that, we don't stay there. We don't stay in the negative thoughts. We don't entertain those other people and their negative stories. We don't look at the circumstances and become absorbed in them, because we realize the circumstances are a season. They're not the entire season. They have come to pass. They've not come to stay. And then we get ourselves redirected. And we just redirect ourselves again and again and again and again. And by doing that, we take ownership of our thinking. And pretty soon, those negative influences just start to bounce off of us because they know they're not going to get anywhere with us. So, single-mindedness is essential to get us to where we want to go. Ideally, we're always thinking about the direction that we want to go, who we want to become, how we can get better, where we're looking to achieve, improve, the value we want to add, the contribution we want to add, etc. But ultimately, I think what single-mindedness means more of is that when we are pulled off track, we get back on track. We don't stay there. And when we're tempted, we start to recognize those things that are trying to pull us off, pull us away from our destination, and we get back into moving toward those things that take us to where we want to go. But if you stay there and you entertain both belief and doubt, both faith and fear at the same time, you're going to end up spinning your wheels and going nowhere, because those things can exist simultaneously, but you need to starve out the fear, the doubt, the anxiety, the voices, the circumstances that are trying to thwart you, and you need to feed the circumstances and the people and the voices, both internally and externally, that are supporting you and helping you get to where you want to go and propelling you to where you want to go. So, Tim, with today's SCE, reminding you, be single-minded. Obviously, we want to try to think always and act and talk in the direction we want to go. But when we don't, you just recognize it and immediately get back on track. And maybe you need to use a cue to get yourself on back, whether it's a trigger word or whatever, but you use all your resources to get back on track as quick as possible, and you don't stay either in those negative voices, or you don't stay in the frustration that says, oh my gosh, I got off track, and beat yourself up, because that's just as bad. So be single-minded. Tim from the LV telling you have a great day. Thanks again for watching. Be single-minded, and I'll talk to you soon.